want to take you on a journey, a terrifying journey, the likes of which you will never ever believe. Slavery in all its essence, in all its hatred, in all its terror. This is what we want to talk about. First thing in the morning, you as a native, a person who's minding your own business, hear gunfire, slavers coming to capture you, slavers coming to kill you, to take you and put you in bondage, to sell you as chattel. You are money. That's all they're thinking about. The name of the game is money. They're not concerned about whether or not you be black, white, or indifferent. It's just the idea that because you are the easiest one to capture, the easiest one to capture, and they felt that you had no kind of religious order, no kind of thought, or no God, that you served no God. Remember, in Europe, the first thing they thought when they saw black people in Africa, they thought you had one eye, that you ate your children, that you had one big foot and one small foot. So their idea of you was something that was just way out of the way. Those who resisted were cut down immediately. They had the women screaming, the children screaming. This was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They always came early in the morning when they would roust you. Once you were rousted out, they would round you up, whole villages. Those who were killed with heads were smashed. That was a common way that slavers did. The children who were hanging on to their mothers usually cried and screamed. Those that were suckling their mothers were sometimes snatched from their mother's arms. In the event that the children would scream and holler, sometimes they would be killed on the spot. Coming down out of the mountains, they had yokes around their neck. They also had chains. They had ropes that were tied together. Those who could not keep up were killed. Children who went along, 3 and 4 years old, holding onto their mothers, would inadvertently, little legs would give out. And when they fell, the slaves would take the gun butts and smash their heads. When you headed down to the ships, there were people who were sick and tired. And when they got sick and tired, sometimes they would fall down. When they would fall down, to keep from using bullets, the slaves would take a knife and open their stomachs, tie them to a tree, and let the marauding animals eat them. They were always, let me tell you one thing, when it was 2,500 in a village or 3,000 in a village, a lot of times 1,500 or less would get to the coast. The coast was usually 150 miles away. When they got down to the ships, or got down to the areas where they were supposed to be boarding ships, sometimes the ships wouldn't be there. They had to put them in holding pens in these castles. When they put them in these holding pens, they could use them however they wanted. But the day came when the ships came, and there they had to do what? They had to decide who was going where, who was going to do what. And what happened was once you were sold, they had to put brands on you. These branding irons were used. This particular one was from one of the Englishmen. This was from Spain. This is used in the Americas. This is used in the Americas to put on a face of a runaway slave to show that R shows that you're a runaway here and here. When the slaves would be put on board these ships, they would pack them. They would hobble them. They would take and pull their legs up in their chests after they were chained, and would put them in 5 across. 5 across, 10 to 15 up. You have 100 up on each side. And then you built decks. You had shelves. These shelves are built so that when you put 100 under this side, 100 here, and 100 here, on both sides they would do it. That way you had 600 on a ship that only held 450. Also there would be 50 in the bow of the ship. That was women and children. Now, as these ships got underway, you must realize that the sanitary conditions on these ships were deplorable. The British men of war that hunted them down said that they could smell these ships for 5 miles. That's how bad it was on these ships. These ships were constituted something called a death ship. These ships were fixed so that you couldn't get off and you couldn't get on. You couldn't live on. But remember one thing, they were capturing slaves. When they captured slaves, they had slaves that were from Angola. They were warring tribes. And when they sold these slaves into slavery, these people into slavery, they had warriors on board. So there was always insurrections on these ships. Always. These ships never got away from the dock peacefully. So blacks resisted their capture. And the untold story is that they were standing on a dock waiting on people to come and gather them up. That didn't happen. They fought hard. A lot of these ships never got out of the docks, never got away from the water, because what they did was, by having the chains on, they would take the chains and constantly bang on the bottom of the ship. They would bang on the bottom of the ship, and holes would come in the ship, and the ship would be leaking. You didn't know where the water was coming from because the slaves were sitting in it and laying it and drowning themselves and taking your ship with you. And the slaves had decided that if we're going to be in slavery, then death be our destiny. We'll die here. When they get out past the breakwater, or out past what we call the 12-mile limit here, but they were about 100 to 200 or 300 miles away from land. You'd run into heavy water or waves coming over the bows of the ship, a storm. They'd run into a storm. And what they would do was they would close the ports. The ports down the bottom, the windows, they would close the ports, there would be no air. Frothing at the mouth would immediately come into play. They were gasping for air. They told me, and I read in a ship's manual, how they were trying to come up through the grates, screaming and howling because they were frothing at the mouth, and they were